What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the channel and welcome to this basic breakdown of what is Dynasty Warriors. Now, if you're an avid viewer of the channel or you already know in depth about this game, this video isn't really for you, as I'll mostly be covering everything that you probably already know about the game. So you can go ahead and skip it, maybe drop a like before you go, and I will see you all in the next video. This video idea was brought to me by a channel member who is an avid supporter of the channel, going so far as becoming a member but doesn't fully understand or grasp what the game is, and wanted me to break it down, the basics for her and potentially anyone else out there looking to get into this wonderful series that I love so much. With Dynasty Warriors 10 on the horizon, it has the potential to attract new fans to the series, so this is a great time to talk about the basic things about Dynasty Warriors. So we're going to start off with, what is Dynasty Warriors exactly? Dynasty Warriors is a series of hack and slash action games started by Koei and created by Omega Force. If you don't know what a hack and slash game is, it's basically a game that emphasizes combat with melee-based weapons like swords or blades. Dynasty Warriors itself draws inspiration from the historical novel Romance of the Three Kingdoms, which entails the epic struggle of power between three kingdoms in ancient China. And Dynasty Warriors itself went on to become an action game series that combined real-time strategy and action, allowing players to be a one-man army against ancient China's enemies. So Dynasty Warriors focused heavily on the 1 versus 100 or 1 versus 1000 experience on the battlefield as a legendary Chinese warrior. Depending on which version of the game you play, it will vary in difficulties, as the earlier titles were a little bit more difficult than some of the more modern and I would say beginner friendly ones. Now, jumping into the Three Kingdoms and the book and the novel. Now, the book is mainly a fantasy and folktale type of book that portrays the events that happened during the Three Kingdoms period, and it primarily promotes the kingdom of Shu over the other two kingdoms. So most of the games have you follow a story in a relative linear path to the novel of how it displays the kingdom or the particular character that you're playing for that particular title. Now, the three kingdoms that are involved for this novel and in most of the games is the kingdom of Shu, Wei, and Wu. So when we think of the kingdom of Shu, again, these are the protagonists, quote-unquote protagonists of the book. This is the kingdom run by Liu Bei. They are usually associated with the color green and the animal dragon. And some of the main characters that you usually start off when playing as the Shu kingdom is usually Zhao Yun, the cover of the game, followed by Guan Yu, Zhang Fei, and even sometimes Zhuge Liang. And then usually at some point you unlock the leader to play through as Liu Bei. Then moving on to the kingdom of Wei. This kingdom is usually associated with the color blue and the mythical figure, the Phoenix, headed by the legendary Chinese commander Cao Cao. When you pick up a Dynasty Warriors game and start off on the Wei side, you usually start off playing with characters like Xiahou Dun, Xiahou Yuan, Dian Wei, and even Xu Chu. And similar to, like I mentioned with the Shu Kingdom, once you have done a certain amount of things to unlock the leader, Mr. Cao Cao himself, you can also play through with him along with any other characters that are available for that particular game. Then moving over to the last kingdom, the Wu Kingdom, usually associated with the color red and the animal of the tiger. Founded by the tiger cub and first emperor of Wu, Sun Quan, but was heavily influenced by his predecessors in his older brother Sun Ce and his father Sun Jian. When starting in the Wu Kingdom, you usually have the option to play as Zhou Yu, Lu Xun, or even Sun Changjiang, and similar to the other two, once you have progressed enough in the story or whatever title it is, Sun Jian becomes playable along with Sun Ce and Sun Quan in order to play their own narratives throughout the story. So those are the base of the three kingdoms that you will usually side with depending on which game you play. If you play Dynasty Warriors 7 and later, there is another kingdom that was introduced, which is the Jin Kingdom. But the Jin Kingdom is born from the Wei Kingdom, and they are actually the ones that end up destroying the three kingdoms and unifying it under their own dynasty. From Dynasty Warriors 7 and on, this faction has become part of the Dynasty Warriors series and is led by Sima Yi and his two sons, Sima Zhao and Sima Shi. And then a miscellaneous group of characters known as the quote-unquote other kingdom. You have the other characters like Lu Bu, Diao Chan, the Nanman King and Queen, Yuan Shao. Depending on which title you play, some of them have story modes, but for the most part, the games focus primarily on the three kingdoms. Now, with each of the three kingdoms, they each have their particular goals. I'm not going to include the Jin Kingdom because I'm pretty sure it's very similar to Wei. So starting off with Wei, usually their goals, or at least Cao Cao's goal, his goal in life is to unify China and to allow the talented people of the world to rule the land. He does not want an emperor. He doesn't want anyone of the monarchy kind of style. He wants to rid of that, at least in the games. He wants to rid of that style and have the world be led by the talented people in the world instead of looking up to one person to rule the land for them.
I've grown tired of all this waiting. Tell me, cousin, what is this world that you envision?
A land where people of talent and vision can change the world. A land where neither emperor nor lord is needed.
And throughout the games, you're going to see that philosophy come to life, as it requires the talent of many strategists and officers in order to make that dream potentially become a reality, depending on, again, which title you play, and if it's following the quote-unquote historicalness of the book, or a hypothetical section where Cao Cao actually conquers the whole world. Moving over to Liu Bei and the Shu Kingdom, they usually follow the path of benevolence, anything that requires them to keep the people around them safe, not just their elite generals and officers or men of the army, but we're talking about the peasants, we're talking about the people who are defenseless. Liu Bei's and the Shu Kingdom's main focus is the defense of the defenseless.
Right now, I have no great quality or strength by which I can prove my worth. However, the land is in need, and my love for the people will not allow me to ignore that need.
That is the main theme that you will see as you play through the Shu Kingdom. A lot of the characters for the Shu Kingdom have that similar virtue inside them, which is why they end up joining Liu Bei. And throughout the playthrough of the Shu Kingdom, you will see that theme come up again and again. And then moving over to the Wu Kingdom, their theme in most of the Dynasty Warriors game is family and cooperation. Most of the time when the Wu Kingdom completes their hypothetical story, it's based on the premise that all the kingdoms can work in harmony together and not complete domination over the land.
Tell me the form of the vision you were striving for.
Peace for Wu, and peace for Shu, peace for Wei. Leave the land to grow as it would do. Grow in peace, negotiations instead of war.
They focus a lot on family and the intricacies of the relationships that they have within their own faction. And then of course you're also going to see them shout tiger every 5 seconds. Now moving into how the game works or usually operates, except for Dynasty Warriors 9, but usually you pick a character, you start a Muso mode, and then you go through a certain amount of stages until you get to the end of the Muso mode. When you pick a character and you're using them throughout these stages, they're usually following a similar story to the novel and to the other characters in the time period, because you're advancing with these characters for specific stages because it's usually important to them in history or in the novel. So for example, if you're playing Huang Gai, he's going to be in the Yeltsin Rebellion stages, the Hulao stages, and then of course stages like Chirbi, because Chirbi was an extremely important battle for Huang Gai. So if you're playing Huang Gai in any of the titles, you will always have a Chirbi stage and probably the Yell Turban and Hulao, because Huang Gai from the Wu Kingdom was from the beginning, he was part of Sun Jian's kingdom from the beginning, and he has to be a part of those important battles or else the story would not make sense. Dynasty Warriors 9 followed the open world format, so there's no stages. You just have these little skirmishes based on where you are on the map. Still follows the story, you're just not having those stages. Now moving into how to play the game. So in Dynasty Warriors 6 and 9, these two games are a little bit different, actually extremely different in terms of how they play. But for every other game, they follow the same pattern. So you have your X attack and you have your Y attack. Every game has a set number of C's or charges. So for your charge 1, if you're playing on Xbox or if you're playing on PlayStation, this is your Y or your triangle hits, okay? So that's called your C1. If you press that button once, every character does a C1, their charge 1. Now when you get into anything higher than a C1, you're going to be using the combination of the X and the Y combos. So for C2, you would press the X button to do a light attack, and then a Y attack to follow it up with a heavy. That is called a character's charge 2 or their C2. And then it builds up until C6. So for C2 to work, you would hit the light button twice, you would hit 2 X's, and then you hit the Y, and you will have a different animation for this character's charge 3. And then when you go up to charge 4 or your C4, you do X 3 times, and then your Y, and then so on and so forth, all the way up until the character's C6. Every game has worked like that except for Dynasty Warriors 6 and Dynasty Warriors 9. If you pick up Dynasty Warriors 6 or Dynasty Warriors 9, they're both very streamlined in how they play. You can really just mash the X button and be fine for the most part. With Dynasty Warriors 6, you have something called the Renbu system. You have this bar on the left side of your screen that represents how far along your hit strings can go. So in the other games, you have a limit to how many times you can use your X button based on the level of the weapon that you have. So if you just press your X button like 3 or 4 times, you'll get to a certain length of your animation and you'll stop. At some point, your character will stop attacking and will loop around. Now with the Renbu system, they completely got rid of that. There is none of that. So based on the number that you have on the bottom part of the screen will determine how far or how advanced your character's hits and animation will go. Every character that starts out is maxed out at the Renbu level of 2, and in order to get to level 3 and the infinite Renbu, you have to unlock it by upgrading your character and making sure to select the correct thing in the skill tree. Now once you have unlocked infinite Renbu, your character will go through again that full animation just like we did with the the older games, the X's all the way through. But when you get to the end, your character will repeat a certain movement up until I think it's like 4 or 5 hits, and then it'll repeat itself. You can technically just sit in there and just do that over and over and over again, because the Y button for Dynasty Warriors 6 and Dynasty Warriors 9 does not follow up with a heavy attack anymore. For Dynasty Warriors 6, you can also mash the Y button for a string of heavy attacks, very similar to the light attacks that I just showed. And again, it will be dependent on how far you have your Renbu up with that specific character. And then in Dynasty Warriors 9, similar thing, you have your flow attacks, and you have a similar system to Dynasty Warriors 6. You can mash the X button and kind of just be fine. And then on top of that, you have something called trigger attacks. So if you hold down the right bumper and press any of the corresponding buttons that come up, you have your Y, your X, your A, and you have your B, your character will do a certain movement, and then you can follow that up by smashing the X button again to do flow attacks. Very, very simple kind of fighting style. But for Dynasty Warriors 6 and Dynasty Warriors 9 are the only games where you don't have to worry about the X and the Y combo system. You don't have to worry about your C1 through C6. Your B for all your games, your B or your circle, is going to be your Muso attack. You become invincible during this, and your character does a crap ton of damage, and depending on how their fighting style is, they'll either do like an explosion or a big AoE attack, which is called an area of effect attack, which means it clears out a wide group of enemies in a certain area. So when your Muso bar at the bottom of the screen fills up, you can press B. In some of the older games, you can hold it down, and that will extend the length of the Muso attack. In Dynasty Warriors 7 and 8, they reduced it to only when you press it, there's no like holding it down. You kind of it just uses it. And in Dynasty Warriors 9, they combined both holding it down and the like one-hit Muso kind of thing. And then from Dynasty Warriors 7 and on, most characters have an aerial Muso, which means if you jump up, which is going to be the A button or the X button on your controller, and you press the Muso button in the middle of the air, you can do an air Muso attack. Now moving into which game you should start with if you've never played any of the Dynasty Warriors games. Now this is being recorded before Dynasty Warriors 10 comes out, so if Dynasty Warriors 10 comes out and it's amazing and it's beginner friendly and stuff, please go play it. That sounds awesome. 2 games I would recommend starting with is Dynasty Warriors 5 or Dynasty Warriors 8. Dynasty Warriors 8, you're going to get the most content for your money or the game that you buy. But Dynasty Warriors 5, I think, is also a really good introduction into the series. It really allows you to kind of learn about each character individually from that game period, because there's a lot of characters that aren't playable by that time. But Dynasty Warriors 5, I think, does a great job really getting you keen to finding a character you really like, because they individualize everything in that game, the cutscenes, the story mode, of course the weapon style they use, and you're going to find a character that you really like to play as. And then Dynasty Warriors 8, I just think is also a good one to start with, because there's just so much content to play with. Every stage you get to pick from one of like 3 or 4 characters, you pick which one you think looks cool, and then you play through it, you get to learn about them a little bit. And then Dynasty Warriors 8 also has all the historical, quote-unquote, historical moves, and they have hypotheticals on top of hypotheticals. So they have a bunch of different ways that the game goes, which I think is awesome. It was a great blend of both worlds, and every character in that game also has unique weapons. So really cool to see that in Dynasty Warriors 8. So those 2 games I definitely would recommend to start with. They're both very beginner-friendly. Wrapping up the video with Dynasty Warriors, Extreme Legends, and Empires. Extreme Legends is basically DLCs before DLCs became a DLC. Does that make sense? So before DLCs were an actual thing, you would get, like, for example, Dynasty Warriors 5 would release, and then like a few months later they would release the Extreme Legend version, which was Dynasty Warriors 5 Extreme Legends, and it would have extra bonus content. You can take your old data that you had on the Dynasty Warriors 5 disc, put it on, and you have a very full game with new modes, new weapons, new difficulties. So the Extreme Legends is just an addition to the main games, unless you get like some of the more modern titles did this, like they started doing the complete editions, which had everything from the base game, and then of course all the new content that came with the Extreme Legends. And then for Dynasty Warriors Empires, you had the ability to basically create your own character, or play as whoever you want, and basically create your own little campaign in Dynasty Warriors. You start wherever you want, you start with whoever you want, and you put whoever you want on your team. You could be Zhao Yun having Lu Bu on your team and completely conquer China if you want to. Dynasty Warriors Empires gives you the freedom through the customization to really build what you want for your playthrough. Dynasty Warriors Empires is more of a strategy sandbox kind of Dynasty Warriors game, which I always enjoy playing, and just it allows more content to play with characters that you particularly enjoy in the main games. But anyway guys, that's gonna be all I have for this video. This is a beginner guide, or just a basic breakdown of what Dynasty Warriors is for anyone wanting to get into the game. Honestly, it's probably my #1 favorite series of all time. It's everything I wrap my channel into, and hopefully I get the opportunity one day to work on it and create the perfect, not the perfect, but the best Dynasty Warriors game that we fans deserve to see. And hopefully Dynasty Warriors 10 blows us all away with our expectations, because I really don't want this series to die. But I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you have any questions, feel free to let me know down below. Let me know what brought you to this video. Was it, Dynasty Warriors 10 coming out? You want to check it out? Dynasty Warriors in general? I'd love to hear the origin stories of all Dynasty Warriors fans. Or even if you're watched to the end and you are a big time hardcore fan, what's your origin story? Love to hear about how you got into Dynasty Warriors, where it all started for you. Other than that guys, that's all I have for the video. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I hope to see you all in the next video. If you enjoyed it, I definitely would appreciate a like or a subscribe, and I will see you all in the next video. Thanks for watching, everyone.